Shalom, everyone, and today we start with studying about Hanukkah, the holiday of Hanukkah. It's a very famous holiday, but as far as I remember from talking to people along my life, most people don't really understand the core idea of Hanukkah. And I'm talking about people that observe Hanukkah and light Hanukkah candles every year. And of course, we need Kabbalah in order to be able to go to the real meaning of everything in life, and especially Hanukkah. Hanukkah symbolizes the meaning or the consciousness, the awareness that Kabbalah symbolizes more than I think most other holidays. Just about the background. The background of Hanukkah, whoever does not know, and whoever does know, and I'll explain it in my words, we are talking about the time, the period of Second Temple time, which means the First Temple time era. King Solomon builds the first temple in Jerusalem some 3,000 years ago, and 420 years later, the Babylonians destroy the temple, destroy and plow Jerusalem, and take to exile most of the people of the kingdom of Judea. And they're in exile for 70 years. Then King Cyrus, the king of the Persian Empire, takes over Babylonia. He makes the Cyrus Declaration that the Jews are allowed, have the permission endorsed to take the temple tools that the Babylonians robbed from them and make Aliyah, move back to Jerusalem under the permit of the emperor, the empire, and rebuild their homeland. Just a minority of the Jews moved back to Jerusalem, and they built the second temple. So now Judea, as it's being called, Yehuda, and Jerusalem, its capital. Now it's a kind of an autonomous region in the Persian Empire, and that's the way it is for the next few centuries. Alexander the Great takes over the Persian Empire. He gets the Middle East into his empire. He dies, and his empire is divided into 3 heirs. The heirs are fighting all the time. Meanwhile, Judea, with Jerusalem, is still keeping its same status as an autonomous state or province inside the empire. It's a multicultural empire like the Persians. The Jews are busy building their homeland and worshiping in the temple, studying, learning, developing their culture. And that's the way it is for a while, till we're coming to the King Antiochus, one of the Hellenistic kings. His seat was in Damascus, and he decides to force the Jews to become Hellenistic. And we are talking about around 170 BCE, around that era, and he's just basically outlaws Judaism. It's against the law to study Torah, it's against the law to circumcise, it's against the law to observe the Sabbath, it's against the law to be Jewish. You have to convert and to live complete Hellenistic life. Whoever refuses is either executed or has to run away. And after a while, the Jews are resisting, try to resist. Some of them do become Hellenized. And then there was a family of the high priest in Jerusalem. They ran away from Jerusalem into Modi'in, which is a one-day walk from Jerusalem, but the Greek army arrives to Modi'in and is trying to force everybody over there to worship the gods of the Hellenism. And then that family of priests, the head of them, Matityahu, he declares rebellion. They go, they take the sword, and they start leading a rebellion against the Greek Empire. Remember, as we just saying, it is 4 centuries at least since the last time Jews held weapons. And now they are like guerrilla fighters, fighting for their belief system, fighting for their land. And after a few years of fighting, little by little, they take back Jerusalem, they get back their autonomy, first cultural autonomy, and then some political autonomy, and finally complete political autonomy. Now, when the Hellenistic king takes over the temple in Jerusalem and he puts an idol of Zeus, I think it was, in the temple and worships in the temple, 3 years later, the Maccabees, as they're being known, the Hashmonaim, they take over and rededicate the temple, and it's called Hanukkah. The date of the defiling the temple was the 25th of Kislev, and the date of re-establishing the worship of God in the temple was exactly 3 years later on the 25th of Kislev. Now they had a problem. They wanted to light the menorah in the temple. However, they did not have kosher oil, olive oil, that was made specially for the menorah. I don't want to go into the details, but they couldn't. Finally, there was a miracle. They found one little jar of oil that was with the seal of the high priest, but that jar was enough for less than 1 day of burning of the candles in the menorah, in the candelabra of the seven lights. And something weird happened, a miracle. The oil that was supposed to last only less than a day lasted for 8 days. Since then, Hanukkah is being declared as the holiday of lights, and every year on the 25th day of the Hebrew month of Kislev, we're starting the holiday of Hanukkah, lighting candles for 8 days. So let us read the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Shabbat 21b, where it explains what Hanukkah is about. The Tanu Rabbanan, our sages are teaching us that on the 25th day of Kislev, Yomei Hanukkah, Tamanya, 8 days of Hanukkah, Inun Delale Misped, these are days that are holiday, celebration. You're not allowed to mourn on these days. Bahon Delolita, not Bahon, you cannot fast on these days. Why? Because when the Greeks when the Greeks came into the temple, they desecrated all the oils. When the kingdom of the Hashmonaim, they won, they found only 1 jar of oil שהיה מונח בחותמו של כהן גדול, ולא היה בו להדליק אלא להדליק יום אחד, נעשה בו נס, והדליקו ממנו 8 ימים. So that's what I just spoke about. That little jar lasted miraculously for 8 days. So the next year, לשנה אחרת, קבעום ועשאום ימים טובים בהלל והודאה. So the next year, they declared that these 8 days will be always days of thanksgiving and praising God with thankfulness, and days of holiday. Okay, that's the basic text for the celebration of Hanukkah. Now, let's go into the story, what happened really in that story? What was the real battle between the Greeks, the Hellenistic kingdom, and the Jews? So, first of all, we realize we have to understand it's a clash between two civilizations, two schools of thought, two totally different, not just religions, it's just a different way of thinking. The Hellenism was around idol worshiping, while Judaism is about monotheism. And we have to understand that when we understand the Abrahamic monotheism, this is something that we really have to understand how important the difference between this and idol worshiping. Because today, there's this kind of talk about, everybody has its own way of thinking and narratives. And, you're entitled to have your own narrative and your own way of thinking. Idol worshiping is dangerous. Why is it dangerous? I'll explain. In an idol worshiping society, if you study truly all the writings, the mythologies of the different idol worshiping cultures, we're talking about the ancient Babylonians or the Egyptians or the Greeks or the Romans or the Nordic, it doesn't matter, or even like the Far East or in the Central and South America and even the North, the gods are not nice. They are very selfish, very hostile to humanity. If they see something you have, they'll be jealous. They might take it away. And you, as a mortal, you have no right whatsoever to resist. And most of the mythologies and the stories of the ancient idol worshiping or paganism culture is about people who try to rebel at the horrible results of that rebellion, which means that was a merely totalitarian society. Why? Because the kings declared themselves as gods, which means the elite of these paganistic civilizations always stepped on, robbed, and abused the simple people. But in what name? We connect to the gods, and we have the rights, and you have nothing. You just serfs, basically you belong to us, slaves and serfs. And so we can take everything you have, including your life, and you have no right to resist it anyway. Okay? So when we're talking about Abraham's monotheism, speaking about one God, and there's nothing but God, it means that everything is part of God, which means every human soul, every creature's spark of life is godly. Because there's one God that is nothing but God. Everything is part of God, and therefore, here we come with those ideas that every human being, because he was created as an extension from God, and he has a godly spirit, he is entitled to happiness. He is entitled to own his own property, and no one has the right to take it away from him. This is a very, very different way of thinking. And the authority is totally divine, which means you cannot change this rule. You cannot just take away because you're stronger, because you're the leader, because you're the king. If you read the Torah carefully, the king was not above the law. The king had to carry the Torah he wrote by himself with him wherever he went. Why? To remind him that he is not above the law, that he's just a public servant, like the priests, like every other part of the government. And that idea that the king is a public servant and he's mortal like everybody else, and he does not have any right by the law to take anything from anyone, this is starting with Mount Sinai. Okay? So trying to to rule a whole nation of monotheism with the ideas of Hellenism, that's very hard because the Jews didn't allow. They didn't agree. They had a sense of justice, okay? And they rebelled in different scales. So the clash between the Greek Hellenism and later on between the Roman Hellenism and Judaism was inevitable. Okay, so that's part of it. So first of all, it's a very important thing to understand that the basic ideas of modern human rights and the idea that you can find in the American Constitution that every human being has the right for his happiness, this is coming from here, from monotheism. And the founding fathers of America declared that that's where they brought it from. Now, there's another aspect. You have Hellenism, which basically sanctified materialism. Everything was focused on material assets. Okay, materialism meant basically you invest everything in your body and your ratio, in your brain, in order to achieve. Okay, while Judaism was saying that materialism, that the body must be subservient to the soul. You must, in order to reach your destiny, your calling, you must have spiritual consciousness, and spiritual consciousness means overcoming your body whims, needs, desires, not suppressing them, but transforming them. That's a basic idea of the monotheistic Abrahamic belief system. We have the dark side, we have evil inclination, we have the body drives and whims and needs and addictions, and our job is to transform them. Our job is to control them. Our job is to rule over them. And that's the source of all human happiness. So again, we have totally two different ways of thinking, totally different civilizations. And when we're talking about Greek Hellenism, we're talking about rationalism. All the Greek philosophers, it's all about rationalism, about the human brain. The human brain can invent all kinds of philosophies and ideas that will be beautiful, and we will create a beautiful world just with the human brain. And here comes Judaism and says, the human brain is very deceptive because once you believe in this and then you believe in that, you can tell yourself stories, you can mislead yourself, you can fool yourself and shame yourself in public and in front of the mirror so many times because the human mind is so elusive, and so you need to stick to, again, some divine eternal law, which is the Torah, and you cannot change that. And basically, you need to realize that the spiritual mind is much stronger than the rational mind. And you have to develop all your life your spiritual mind, but this means connecting to the Creator, means by the law of affinity, you have to be kind, loving, caring, considerate, unselfish, in order to be able to really develop your real high self. Those principles were totally against all what, a lot of what the Greek philosophy was about. Here was the Greeks' life, the Hellenistic life, was the body and his pleasures, everything surrounded around that. That was the temple. They were like sanctified, the body and the pleasures. While in Judaism, you can't just feed more to the body. You have to, you cannot suppress it, but you have, as we said before, you need to overcome, you need to control the body. You have to use it. The body must serve the soul and the higher purpose. And that's why you need modesty. and modesty by all means. So that's why you don't see the Jews building fancy buildings and stuff like that. Even till today, you don't find great palaces in Jerusalem. It's like that this is not that was not the story, because beauty was the beauty of the connection to the endless light of the Creator, and not just beautifying the physical body. So you have to cover the body. You have to be modest in all ways, which means, you can't just put money outside. And this is very much against Judaism. Here we have 5 is egotistic individualism. And in Judaism, it's like that was totally not right. Altruism, you have to develop your giving, your caring, your sensitivity to others. That was the major thing in Judaism. The Hellenistic, how do you show your success? Material growth. As we said, big buildings, beautiful big cities, everything has to be big and rich, and that's how you spend your money. Well, the Jews spend the money on learning, on books, on reading and writing. You have to remember that during the Second Temple time, little kids started to learn how to read and write. It doesn't matter what your background. It was the only culture around the world in which everybody knew how to read and write and learn from books. Okay? And when we are talking about Hellenism, even we've got about like the peak of Hellenistic culture, Athens was a fake in today's ideas. In Athens, there were a few hundred rich people, elite. They had the access to everything, but they lived off the work of thousands of slaves. There was no real democracy in Athens. When you have like thousands of slaves, that's not democracy. Of course, the slaves could not vote for the government, right? And of course, the slaves were basically totally had no rights, of equality, education, stuff like this. So that was just a few elitistic people that they decided for everybody else. So that was not really a democracy. On the other hand, when we are talking about the second that era, among the Jews, most of the Jews were independent entrepreneurs. People had family businesses. It was much more egalitarian, much more equality. Every family has its own. There were very few very rich people, very few slaves. Most of it was people worked and created their own prosperity, and was a totally different kind of a culture. One more thing, colonialism. When we talk about Hellenism is a colonialistic entrepreneurship. We're talking about people with Greek origin that took over huge amount of lands and then subjugated those lands to their own government. Okay, so they turned everything they took over to become part of the Hellenistic culture, slowly but surely. And one nation resisted like no one else, and that were the Jews. So you had to go against the Jews because they endangered the unity of the empire. So of course the Jews were very anti-colonialist. They didn't even try. Jews almost never tried to expand and take over other nations and make them subjugated to them. That's very rare. And basically the Jews were of these generations, like today, were totally about, everybody's independence, and, you just create your own whatever you want, your own life. And we can see how the Hellenistic empires simply encroached and took over more and more lands, more and more, and turn them, like in Greek, to a feudal system of government, which means you have one rich landlord. He takes over huge areas, and he has many slaves, and these slaves or serfs, they work the ground, his lands. There's one mansion on the lands, and everybody else serves as like our slaves or serfs in this. And you can see it in archaeological diggings all over the Hellenistic world. That's how it was. So what you see in archaeological excavations in Israel, that when the Hellenistic, either Greeks and later on the Romans, take over, you see that the village disappears, or the town disappears. You can see a building of a mansion for the landowner, and then the farmers, who were like middle class people with their own businesses, they become serfs, and they live in little huts next to the mansion, which means this is total colonialism. And of course, the Jews didn't like it. So we are talking about something that we can see the fight going on till today. And when we see, especially the words of Tacitus, one of the most famous Roman historians and politicians, he wrote a lot about history and about different cultures. And what he said very clearly was, they, the Jews, regard as profane everything that we hold sacred, and vice versa. Okay, so let me explain what we're talking about. Two different ways of thinking. So when we are talking about idol worshiping, and we can see till today, these two ways of thinking still taking over. Today we don't have idol worshiping in the old sense. You know, you can find some people still bowing down to statues and praying to them. This is not that common as it was in the ancient times. But Judaism is teaching us that anger is like idol worshiping. And there's many other things. And we especially, as a common name for one thing, which is called addictions, when we idolize the body, whims, and desires, like emotional whims, emotional desires, when we allow anger and hate as a way of life, when we sanctify just anger, when we appreciate victimization, and we appreciate negative way of thinking because I feel like it's right, this is also idol worshiping. Basically, the only way, according to Abrahamic monotheism, to connect to the one God, the source of all that is good, the source of endless light and positivity, is by the law of affinity. If he is good, you should be good too. If he's loving, you should be loving too. If he's merciful, you should be merciful too. Okay, if he's forgiving, you should be forgiving too, because he's endless love and light. And the only way you can really have a successful life is when you overcome those negative emotions, and they are negative because by the law of affinity, the moment you idolize, you just confirm and affirm those negative emotions like lust, which means we see that happening even today. When, because I feel like doing it, I should do it. Because I have a lust, why shouldn't I do it? And especially, I can always rational all my emotions and bodily needs and say, why is it okay? With all kinds of mumbo jumbo words of finally trying basically to allow things that shouldn't be done But, you know, if you trust human rationale and you just don't have any laws of eternal value, like the laws of the Torah, then you can do everything. You can do everything, whatever you feel like. You always find a way why it's okay, why it's allowed. And if you heard the, you know, you can see around things that once upon a time, just a few decades ago, were totally unacceptable. Today, they're becoming not just acceptable, you are not allowed even to say there's something wrong with it. Just why? Because my body feels the need for it. It doesn't matter what the consequences, that must be okay. You should respect it. Individualism that is egotistic, the body and its pleasures. We have till today still that fight going on. So yes, the Jews won in that battle against the Hellenistic kingdom. But later on, a century later on, the Romans came into the picture and the fight continued. And the Romans colonized Israel again. And there was still, again, a clash between the two societies. The Romans were also Hellenistic in many ways, most ways. And, you know, and then the Jews in that round and a few rounds later of the Jews rebelled again and again because they were forced to go against their own values. So they had to rebel. And the result was expulsion, destruction, and colonization of the land of the Jews. Okay? So, yes, the Jews lost many battles. But we're talking about today, as I say many times, when the Romans robbed the temple in Jerusalem, Titus took the treasures of the temple and he built with that the Colosseum in Rome as a great show of victory over the ideas of the Jews. And what did they do in the Colosseum? They did stuff that was basically part of Hellenism. They were doing reality shows, gladiator shows, people killing animals, animals killing and eating people, people killing people in front of children, families, whatever. Today, this is illegal. So yeah, 2,000 years later, monotheism is maybe closing to win the war. We lost many battles, but still we can see the war waging around us. It's still the same thing. It's monotheism against idol worshiping. You can say you're atheist. You can say you don't believe in God of the Bible. But the moment you worship anger, hatred, and you agree to all of those rituals that people create today, that basically it's worshiping egotistic individualism, it's all materialistic, it's all rationalism that is fake usually, because you come first from the emotional thing that you want to allow something that you really desire, and then you find the excuse why rationally it is okay. And the result is the very same thing about worshiping hatred, worshiping blame, worshiping anger, worshiping all kinds of emotions that basically are very bodily. They're always going together with the lack of modesty, the lack of altruism, the lack of commitment to anything of true spirituality, because true spirituality is about one very important thing. And that leads us to the next thing. The one important thing is that the body is here to serve the soul. That the physical reality is a place for us in which we can create light out of darkness, love out of hatred, spiritual fulfillment out of darkness and negativity and strife. This is what reality is about. That whatever is just physical is fake because it's not real. Because if you're not considering the spiritual dimension of human life, of every human being, which means why can't you just kill somebody? Why you can just rob that somebody or abuse? Because there's a soul inside that body, and there's a sanctity of life. And in Hellenism, there was no sanctity of life. You know, one of the things that it says that the first Greeks that met Jews, and they were shocked to write to their friends that the Jews do not kill their sick babies. Because in the Hellenistic world, if you had sick babies or they were not strong enough, or you would kill them. Or if you had too many daughters, you would kill the baby, and there was no problem with it. And the Jews were, you don't do that, because that's a human soul in a physical body. And the body, yes, the body is not perfect, but you have a soul inside, and you have no authorization to kill that human life. They didn't understand it. Today, thank God, nobody does that, okay? Not in public. But so little by little, monotheism and its ideas and values are winning the war, but we're still in the middle of the war. The war is still around us. We have to be really careful. Which side are we taking? Because it's very simple to see the symptoms of who sides with which side. Okay. So what was the main thing about the creation of the miracle? And most of the talks about what is called Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem is wrongly translated into martyrdom. But there's a very important thing about Kiddush Hashem. Kiddush Hashem means when a person is, and by the way, it's not just about somebody sacrificing their life. No, it's not. Kiddush Hashem is any aspect of human behavior in which you have a very strong inclination towards something that connects to the body and its needs, and you overcome it, and you transform it. It looks from the outside that you are sacrificing because you're giving up, but you're not really feeling you're sacrificing because you just prefer to connect to the spiritual aspect of life, even though that means to step on and give up on a lot of physical interest. If you think, one of the simplest examples is the story of Joseph the righteous. And it says in the Midrash, he was in the story of Joseph and the wife of his employer, Potiphar. And she wants him, and she tells him openly. That's, again, paganism. She owns him. He's a slave. And if she feels like sleeping with him because he is her property, he cannot say no. And she says, come sleep with me. And he said, how could I do that? You are a married wife. And how can I do that to your husband that trusts me so much? Okay, and how could I do that to God? Which means Joseph was trying to convince her that he's not capable of doing that. She wants it. She desires it. And we have to remember, at that time, Joseph is like the CEO of Potiphar's business. And Potiphar was one of the most important people in Egypt at that time. So taking care of Potiphar's business means being a very important person. So he dressed up well, Joseph. He was in his early 20s, and he was one of the most beautiful, attracting men that ever lived on earth. The problem is that Potiphar's wife, also, the Midrash says, was one of the most attractive women that ever lived. So it's not just that he didn't like her, his body was attracted to her. He could say, what can I do? She can kill me. She's my boss. You know, the brain can always invent ideas. However, but that's not the way Joseph was educated, was uprooted by his father. He had in mind one thing. If and that's, we have to understand, there is a law in the Bible, in the Torah, that says the body is important, life is holy. However, if you're going to do something that is going to hurt your soul beyond repair in this lifetime, just you better dead and not do that. And there are three aspects of those laws. One is shedding blood. If somebody tells you to kill somebody else or I'll kill you, you should tell them, kill me, I cannot kill somebody else. The second is idolatry, which means somebody tells you, go sleep with your friend's wife, otherwise I kill you. So, okay, kill me. And the third is idol worshiping. And if you really go deep into the text, these are the three major atrocities that Adam transgressed when he ate from the tree of knowledge. I don't want to go into this idea, but in Judaism, in Jewish thinking, these are the major three problems. So we here, the descendants of Adam, and we are here to correct his sin. The moment we have an option to save our lives, but to intensify the sin of Adam, we came to this world to enlighten our souls, to elevate our souls, to ascend the different levels of spiritual awareness and connection to the Creator. But the moment I'm transgressing and I'm doing those three, I am hurting my soul beyond means. And that means you better be dead and not do that. So you see that why when the Jews of that time realized that they have to basically, there's no sanctity of life anymore under Hellenism. There's, because you go and watch people killing each other and you pay for that. This is a culture that is totally against the correction of humanity. Idol worshiping, idolatry, all of that. So the moment they realize this is not going anywhere, we are going to become Hellenistic unless we just fight. And what they did basically, which is totally illogical, for 400 years, you did not hold weapons. And now you're going to fight against one of the strongest armies in the world, the most professional warriors in the world. If you ever learn about the Hellenistic professionalism of the war machine, and you're going to fight them? Are you crazy? You have no chance. And they did fight, and they won. And the celebration is not about the physical victory. The symbol is that jar of oil, against all logic, against all the rules of the material world and rationalism, burned 8 days because they needed it to burn 8 days. So you have to understand that Hanukkah is about the major symbol of fighting evil, fighting everything in humanity that is wrong, fighting everything that is dark, fighting everything that takes us back. So when we're talking about the word Kiddush Hashem, it's about sanctifying everything that is around us. Because the moment we realize that we have a body for one purpose and one purpose only, and that purpose is to overcome the body, not to destroy it, but to transform it, to control it, and to change its use just to serve spiritual, enlightened goals of altruism, spirituality, connecting to the world beyond. This is what matter is about. Matter is here to serve, and that's our job. So Kiddush Hashem basically means the sanctification of our reality. And this is the purpose. And if you don't live by that purpose, you're simply becoming subjugated to idol worshiping, because you worship your body, you worship your whims, you worship your desires, you worship the anger, and you worship all of those emotions that basically destroy you and disconnect you from your calling. So in Kabbalistic terms, it means transforming Malchut, which means our physical life, physical emotions and desires and thinking, into the desire to receive light, not physicality, in order to share, which means we are here to get closer to God, overcoming the body consciousness, overcoming materialism, overcoming selfishness, overcoming whatever materialistic rationality is about. That is everyday fight. You need to become a light warrior, and this is the only way. And otherwise, you simply die while he's still alive. Why? Because what the sages are teaching us, Reshaim b'chayehem nikraim metim. Selfish people are dead while they're still alive. Why are they dead? Because we have to connect to God's light. And God's light is endless, infinite. And the only way you connect to infinite is by creating infinity in your own life. Selfishness is the opposite of infinity. Selfishness means that everything belongs to me, and everything because of that is finite. Because how much can I take? How much gold can I own and use? How much money? It's all finite. Doesn't matter if you own half of the gold on earth, even all of the gold on earth. That's not infinity. It's the opposite. The only real treasures are spiritual. They are beyond the physical senses. This is where the real treasure lies. And that's our calling. So when we overcome, when we transform, our body needs the desires and logic, we basically go outside the box. And that's very important. Okay? Why is that very important? It's called a miracle. In Hebrew, it's called nes. Nes means in Hebrew to flee, up and above. Nes means to run out the box. Think about it. The box is made of the number 7, because when we are stuck in our physical rationale, you can move in 7 directions only. You can move with your mind. You can to the right, to the left, that's 2. Forward and backwards, that's 4. Up and down, 6. And yourself, me, how much do I get? So you have 7 vectors that basically that's where your consciousness is. Where else can your mind move? You can move outside the box. You can move to the world beyond, to the spiritual dimension. And the only way to do it is when you think about others. Good. Loving others as you love yourself. When you do that, you create a miracle because you connect to this 8th dimension. And in Hebrew, the word for 8 is shmone, and it's the same letters as neshama, a soul. So when we connect to our soul, we create a miracle. So the whole thing about human life is about getting up and above all the body needs, perceptions, and taking the spiritual dimension as our guide, our world, our existence, and injecting it into everything we do. So, how do we do that? And how is Hanukkah connected to it? First of all, the Kabbalists are teaching us that you can find in Jewish tradition that is not Kabbalah also, that Hanukkah existed from the beginning. And why is it? Because we have to remember, if everything was just before the Big Bang, when the whole universe was one, it included everything, including all possible future parallel universes. So we can see that when you read the Torah in Hebrew, the original language, it was created. The word light in Hebrew, or, is the 25th word in the Torah. Again, remember, Hanukkah is on the 25th of Kislev, the Hebrew month of Kislev. So the word light is on the 25th word of the Torah. Hashmonah is the 25th journey in the wilderness. When the Israelites traveled from Egypt to their homeland, they go through 42 journeys. The 25th journey was Hashmonah. The family that led the rebellion became the dynasty, the royal dynasty of Judea, were called Hashmonah, the family of Hashmonah. When you read the list of holidays in Parashat Emor, in the book of Leviticus, there's a list of all the holidays and their names and the way to celebrate them. And after that list of holidays comes the mitzvah of lighting the menorah with pure olive oil. You can find it in Leviticus 24, 2-4, which is amazing. It's like, and when is it? The last day in the list is Simchat Torah, the 8th day of Sukkot. That's the last one. The one, and immediately after Simchat Torah, you have in the Torah the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, the candelabra, with the pure oil, that's Hanukkah. How do you celebrate Hanukkah? That's exactly what it is. So let's go deeper into what Hanukkah is about. It says, when we read Rabbi Azakloria, the greatest Kabbalist of the 16th century, that his teachings basically created the Kabbalistic school till today, that all real main schools of Kabbalah and Hasidism are based on his teachings. And he says as follows, לאחר תיקון ההוד על ידי מתתיה בן יוחנן כהן גדול ובניו, שבדרך כלל יש בו קלקול ממעשה התחתונים, בסוד נתנני שוממה כל היום דבר. So Rabbi Zaklori is saying that Matityahu, who was the father of the Hashmonai family, his 5 sons, he was a Kohen, a priest. He ran away with his family from Jerusalem because of the oppressions of the Hellenistic government. But they made a tikkun, a correction of the Sephirah of Hod. Sefirat Hod is number 8 in the tree of life from above. Okay? And number 3 from the bottom. And the Kabbalists were saying for a long time that Sefirat Hod is also, you can read it as Dava. You can find the book of Lamentations, chapter 1, verse 13. It says, he made me desolated the whole day with pain. And the word pain, which it's not just pain, it's a kind of a lingering, anguishing pain. The word is dava, which is the same letters of the word hod. So whenever we approach that sephirah, it could mean pain and anguish. For instance, when we're talking about the time of writing the Mishnah and the Zohar, the sages of that generation, we're talking about first, second centuries BCE, they said the 5th millennium of the Hebrew count will be the dark millennium. The 5th millennium started on the year 240 in the, according to the calendar most people count, 240 CE, okay, Common Era, and till 1240. Today, we call those days the Dark Ages. Why Dark Ages? The world was really getting dark during those ages. So they call it the Dark Millennium. We call it the Dark Ages. And that's why one of the reasons that the Mishnah and later on the Talmud and the Zohar were written, because that was an oral teaching. It was not allowed to write it down because then you limit. It had to be a living wisdom that always transforms according to the time and the needs. Not, of course, getting out of the boundaries the Torah is giving, of the eternal laws. Still, that's the Hod, the 5th millennium. But when we're talking about Dava, Hod, Sfirat Hod, we're talking about this is a painful point, painful place. דבר אותיות הוד, בגלל הוד גם הנצח אנומי בבהירות, אבל בחנוכה הנצח נהיה בו שמן זית צח, נעשה דבר כמו בזמן המקדש. During Hanukkah, if we're talking about Hod as the 8th Sephirah, so an 8 is also the number that symbolizes getting out of the box. On Hanukkah, there is a correction to Hod, Sephirat Hod, which means we have an access to the transformation. What does it mean, transformation? In our world, the darkness must be transformed into light in order to get tikkun points, which means you can't really grow without challenges. No pain, no gain. Easy comes, easy goes. So the bigger the challenge, bigger the light. So when we are talking about the 5th millennium, or when we're talking about that Matityahu, he corrected the Hod, he made a correction for all of humanity in Sefirat Hod through their Kiddush Hashem, which means they went up and above everything they knew about. They were Kohanim, priests, declaring rebellion and leading the rebellion for years till the victory arrived. So that's exactly the most illogical possible. And they did it. And what they did, they corrected Sefirat Hod. And the result that Sephirah is shining during those 8 days of Hanukkah like no other day of the year. And what does it mean? The light that is being revealed during these 8 days of Hanukkah are so powerful, so great, that during the time of the temple, to connect to the menorah, you had to be the high priest going into the temple, very pure, and then you light the great menorah in the temple in front of the Holy of Holies. And then you could bring down the endless light of the Creator. Because of the correction of Matityahu and his sons, now it is available for all of us to become high priest in our own home. And we can light the lights of Hanukkah. And when we do that, we can bring in a tremendously huge light. There's nothing that light. And this is the light that is called Or Haganuz, the treasured light. When it says, and God said, let there be light, we know that the sun, the moon, and the stars were created only on the fourth day. So there was another light before that. And that light is not a physical light for the eyes. This is a light that is the essence of life. It's a spiritual light. It is the hidden, treasured light that appears in, and God said, let there be light. So that treasured light, that light of endless power, this is the light that every human being is looking for, because we came from that light. This is the light that is hinted in the book of Genesis, as we said, and that light is mentioned on the 25th word of the Torah. There's another legend that says that Adam, when he was created, he did everything he did with that light, under that light of the Creator, but that kept for 36 hours. How many candles do we light for Hanukkah? So most people will say 44. No. 8 candles of the 44 are the shamash. It is another light outside the 8 candles that we light. So let's say the room is in darkness. The light, the spiritual light we're talking about, you cannot walk under that light. So if there is, let's say, the lights went off, power failure. So now you sit only with the Hanukkah lights. You should use the light of that extra special candle called shamash, which is the 9th candle. Okay, so you don't work under the light of the true spiritual authentic light. But so if you take away from 44 lights, take away 8, okay, which means every day of the 8 days of Hanukkah we light all of them. Now we have 36 lights possible. And these 36 candles we light on Hanukkah, they are basically so powerful because when we light them with the right consciousness, we can reveal the treasured light of humanity only for half an hour. Because that light is so intense, it cannot be here in this physical world more than half an hour. So when you light Hanukkah candles, you have all kinds of games. You have like playing the dreidel, sevivon. You can eat latkes and panchkes and donuts, whatever you just call it. All of that is totally meaningless. It is just a way to keep us for half an hour next to the candles. Because when we are next to the candles, we can bring into ourselves that spiritual light in order to help us to elevate in all the levels of spiritual correction. Okay. So if we're talking about the tree of life, we can see that Sefirat Hod is number 8. But the 2 directions, the light can go from above to below. In that case, it is the 8th light of the direct light. What does it mean, direct light? Idol worshiping. I want it. I have passion for it. I take it. Why? Because who cares? I want it. Okay, that's basically individualism, rationalism of the 21st century. It was always there. It's called direct light. When you bring in just a direct light, because I want to be happy and I want to be excited, and who cares if it's not going to last more than half an hour or 10 minutes? Okay, I want it now. Now, it's all about now. It's all about I. It's all about want. All of them are illegal in the spiritual universe. So what do? When you find yourself deep into that lust and greed and need and desire and passion, they will kill you. Because whenever you get the direct light, it's too intense for us to deal with. So, but when we turn that light around, which means all that what I just got, I am using it in order to help people. I create now what is called returning light. And when we count 8 Sefirot from the bottom, we reach the 8th Sefirah, which is called Bina. Bina is very important Sefirah. It's called also mother, because Bina is feeding all the Sefirot below. And how many Sefirot below? 7. 7 Sefirot. Okay? Maybe Snow White and the 7 dwarfs, it's coming from that. Because basically Bina is also called Lebanon. Lebanon is not just a name of a country, Lebanon, but it's Hebrew. It means it's only in Hebrew you can understand it. It means Lebanon, but it's also Bina. Lebanon is another name for Bina, because that's where the pure white light is coming from in order to feed and nourish our souls. Okay, so we said already that the soul is number 8. And number 8 is a soul. It's the same letters, Shmone and Neshama. And 8 is also the supernatural. We learned it from the Maharal of Prague, also 16th century. Now that we understand that all about Hanukkah is about connecting to this enormous spiritual invisible light, which everybody is looking for, which what we say enlightenment. And we know that a human soul is God's candle, Proverbs 20:27, which means there's a connection between the human soul and that light. In order to explain a little bit more, when the world was created, it was created in complete perfection and unity. It was called the endless because there was nothing finite. However, when we are in a state in which everything is infinite, pleasure is infinite, understanding is infinite, power is infinite, love is infinite, but where am I? Where is my ability to create it? Because when you have this influx of endless light into you, in the beginning, you're just greedy, and then you become like the light. You want to give also. Problem is everybody is stuck with it, what you created for him. So what do? And that's why the sages are saying that in the beginning, there was one tzimtzum, the souls did not want to receive the light just because they wanted to be creators on their own. But the moment there was the tzimtzum, all the souls pushed away the light out. I want to do it by myself. Immediately after, there was darkness because what came out? Selfishness. I want. And that doesn't work. And that's why the legend says God was creating universes, destroying them, because it was all about judgment. And what is judgment? I want it now, and then it's not sufficient. That was the first tzimtzum. And then God had to make another tzimtzum. In that tzimtzum, the soul had to lift itself up, give up a lot of its desires, reach the 8th Sephirah, attach to it. And now you got a new vessel that has 2 different vessels. One is I want, I need, I desire. That's a vessel, Malchut. But it is with the soul. It is with Binah. And being with Binah means that I desire also, but always for the purpose of sharing, giving, caring for others. We understand that the vessel that was created on Tzimtzum B, the second one, is a vessel that is less selfish, less intense. However, it can live, it can survive. This is the vessel that Malchut and Binah are together. The soul, the human soul, represents the second Tzimtzum. The human soul by itself sees everything, knows everything, and is always generous and loving and kindness and kind. But the body is coming for the first Tzimtzum. That's why the body is always about me, myself, and I. And that's why the body is always in trouble. Depression, disappointment, pain, agony. Just because when you're selfish, by the law of affinity, you're disconnected from God's light. And when you're connected to the soul, the neshama, the eighth dimension, you're connected today to the eighth dimension when you overcome the body. Not suppressing, not eliminating, overcoming, harnessing. So that's called second Tzimtzum, in which in our world we have to make the soul govern the body, and by this we make the Tzimtzum. Because the human soul knows about giving. But when it comes into the human body, it can get very confused. So the body Tzimtzum is judgment, selfish desire. The soul, which is the second Tzimtzum, it's mercy, the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. It's about Malchut sweetened by Binah. How does Malchut sweetened by Binah? Malchut gives up big chunk of its identity, and only then it can ascend to that level that is called Binah, and then it creates a new kind of vessel, because Binah is only about giving. The moment you connect Malchut to Binah and merge them, you create what is called a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Love others as you love yourself. That's basically what it is. So we need all our lives to live by the authority, frequency of the second Tzimtzum, while leaving the first Tzimtzum because it's a selfish desire. And how is that manifested? We're talking about sweetening the judgments, transforming the negativity and the selfishness into altruism. Altruism, in order to be altruistic, you need to be a giving person. You need to be connected to a soul. So the moment you connect to your soul, you understand what altruism means. But the moment you're busy yourself with unconditional giving, you will connect to your soul. So there are 3 meditations, Kabbalistic meditations, that are dealing with that kind of unity of the light and the vessel. One, it's always, if you look, the light of chesed, the light of giving, sharing, loving kindness, it's always the tetragrammaton. That's why you can see it on the right column. On Gevurah, the vessel on the left, you have 3 different layers, vessels, and they have 3 different names. The top one is Aleph K Yud K. That's when the vessel is in Binah. That's a judgment aspect of Binah. You have one lower level is Elokim, and one lower level is Aleph Dalet Nun Yud Adonai. All 3 with the 3 times of the tetragrammaton. If you calculate them according to Gematria, the worth of the letter, you get the number 250, which equals ner, a candle. So what is a candle? The candle is the bridge. The candle is the consciousness of a human being that on one hand, he doesn't give up on his need to achieve the light. On the other hand, he knows he has to be enlightened in order for that to happen. And that's the meditation on the right. So it's like three meditations. One is uniting the name from the right and the name from the left on the top. Okay, on the line that it says 47, the right of it. Then there's another level, Youdkevitch and Elokim, and then Youdkevitch tetragrammaton, Aleph and Nun Yud, comes together to 91. All of these numbers, they are a symbol, each one of them is a symbol of another level of unity in the upper worlds. When you could meditate on all three unifications, you get the number 250, which is the same number of the Hebrew letters ner, a candle. So what's the secret of the candle? We know that the candle is about connecting to Binah. Repentance is not the word is reconnecting. How do you reconnect? When we humans reconnect to the light of giving, sharing, honesty, love, unconditionally, we connect to Binah. And that's called teshuvah, because that means that you reconnect, you revisit the source of a human soul. And that's called Binah, the mother of the sun is happy. Remember, we said Binah is above the 7 lower. It's like a mother that feeds its children. And that's what the mother of sons is happy. That's Psalm 113:9. One of the most famous stories of Hanukkah is about the Greek leader, commander, took into captivity a family that resisted his commands and refused to disconnect from Shabbat, circumcision, tefillin, study, kosher, whatever. So they're being captured, they're being brought to the commander of the army. The mother's name is Hannah, and she has 7 sons. Hannah is a code for Binah. Why? Because Hannah in Hebrew has the numerical value of 63. And 63 is also the frequency of Binah. So that lady called Hannah, that holy lady, that basically what the commander said, if you do not give up your ideology, I'm going to kill all your sons and you're going to watch them being murdered, and then I'll kill you. We're talking about when you don't see the light inside a human being, you don't see a human being as a having of a divine soul. That's the only way you can murder people with such a cruelty and vengeance. They refused to surrender. All 7 sons were executed in front of her eyes, and then she was executed, right? Remember, if I can't be the person who lives the calling after the sin of Adam, my life doesn't worth it. So they simply gave up their lives for a higher call. That sanctity of life changed the balance in the world. That allowed that one little jar of oil could defy the laws of physics and burn for 8 days. That's also about Binah. Binah is the upper world. So how do we, I think I spoke a lot, so it's very late. And so how do we connect to that light? As we said, the light, when we light the Chanukiah, the Hanukkah candles, we can bring the light like we are the high priest in the temple. And that light is available. So how do we do that? First of all, you can light it with olive oil. That's the highest level, although just a simple candle, it doesn't have to be marked on Hanukkah candle. Any candle could serve for lighting Hanukkah candles. The highest level is olive oil. In the temple, they use olive oil, and olive oil is connected to the light of wisdom more than other physical materials. The wicks, they symbolize the light of chasadim, giving. And that is a very important concept. Why? Because the size of the flame is not determined by the amount of oil, but by the size of the wick. You can have a whole barrel of 20 gallons of olive oil, but the size of the flame will be determined by the wick. Okay? The light of wisdom, which is the essence of the treasured light, it's infinite. How much? Again, infinite. What determines how much light shines into our lives is the wick. And the wick is the light of giving, sharing, and caring that we generate by our own actions and thoughts. Which means it doesn't matter how much money you have, how many armies do you have. You draw the light of wisdom and it burns you down because there's no light of chasadim. Light of chasadim determines that in this physical reality, the manifestation of the supreme light is determined, remember the barrel of oil, is determined by the energy of giving that the human being generates. So it doesn't matter how much you eat, how much sex you make, or how much money you own, how much pleasure and luxury you have. Doesn't matter. These are physical light of wisdom tools to bring it in. It's like it's a flash and a crash because using only the light of wisdom, which again, materialism, again, individualism, egotism, it has no life. We go to the Torah, you need to generate charity, tithing, caring for others, even just being sensitive to other people's right for happiness. That is the energy that you generate when you do good to others, becomes the vessel for the light, the eternal light, to dwell in your life. It's the only thing that is eternal, that stays forever. So, of course, as I said before, you can use oil, floating wicks, any kind of wicks. You can also use candles, simple wax candles. Everything goes on Hanukkah. You just need to light the candle. All 8 candles must be the same height, okay? Except from the 9th, which can be in any level. It can be higher, lower, it doesn't matter. You light on the first night 2 candles. Why? You light the shamash, which is the 9th candle. As we said, that's lit before. And then you light the candle of the holiday. 1 on the first day, 2 on the second day, 3 on the 4th day, and so on, which means always 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2 plus 1, 3 plus 1, so on, till on the 8th night, you light 9 candles. It's one shamash and 8 candles. Where is the best place to light the Chanukiah? At the door, opposite to the mezuzah, and low. more than 3 handbreadths from the ground. Okay, why low? Just, and that's something very important to know. Okay, as we said, by the door opposite to the mezuzah, low between 3 to 10 handbreadths from the floor. Okay, adding candles from left to right, lighting right to left. Okay, so every day you add candles from left to right. You light them from right to left, which is again direct light, returning light. Why low? It says in Genesis 4:7 that the sin is crouching at your door. And there's another verse that says that the infant will play near the cobra's den. In Hebrew, it doesn't say den, it says the hole of the cobra's tunnel. It says that if when you look at the door from the outside, on the right, you put the mezuzah on the bottom of the upper third. That's where you bring in the positivity to the house. But God made them one in front of the other. So on the left side, says the Zohar, that's a dark side of the house. And where is the darkest? You have the hole of the tunnel of the snake on the left below. Remember, it's a tunnels of the snake that when you light the Hanukkah candles there, you light that light in order to bring that light into his tunnel, kill him in his tunnel. That's the name of the game of Hanukkah. Kill the snake, the dark side, evil, materialism, hatred, idol worshiping, idolatry. This is what we have to destroy in Hanukkah. And that's why it's low, because when you light the candles, you're standing, and your hand is higher than the candles. And you make the blessing, you bring the candle down, because you're bringing the endless light from above to below. You light the Hanukkah candle. You light, which means you arouse that light in the physical world. So that light will go right into the hole of the snake, deep into his tunnel, and burn him there. Because the only way to destroy the darkness is to bring in the light. Look, the Maccabees, who created the rebellion, they realized sometimes you cannot just win the war with good intentions and good meditations. Sometimes you have to take your physical body and totally subjugate it into fighting for your spiritual freedom. But it's not comfortable. But it's cold outside. But it's raining. But I might be wounded or killed. Now, that's what does it mean? Sometimes you need to use the physical body, get it out of the comfort zone to create the miracle of mind over matter, of the spiritual over the physical. Also, if you look at the bottom, there are two holy names. On the right, the name Shin Dalet Yud, this name has the power to overcome darkness. This name is written on most mezuzahs, which is on the parchment. Remember, that is the parchment that is on the right top third of the doorpost. If you take this name, Shin Dalet Yud, which is a very, very powerful holy name, and you get one step above, in the letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So on the right, you have the letter Shin. One above it is Taf. Then the second letter is Dalet. One above it is Hey. Then the third from the left, from the right is Yud. One above it is Kaf. You get Kaf Taf, which is the 8th name of the 72 names of God. And what's the power of that name? Fighting negativity, darkness, and achieving protection. So now to the blessings. I'll do it fast. You can download in this video. You'll have the a link to a booklet of the meditations of lighting the candles. Now, when do you light the candles? Not before sunset. Not before sunset. And it could be any time. It's like it can be after sunset. The best time is around stars, when the stars come out. But if you can't, you can do it all night. So how do you light the candles? So you have the meditations in the booklet. I don't have time right now, it's too much. But the first blessing, is, you say Baruch. The first word is Baruch. You say it's transliterated in English. Baruch, it's when you say the word Baruch, it's bringing the light from the Keter, which is the top of the tree of life. Ata, right column, Hashem, Adonai is a center column. When you say that, you meditate on two names of God that we spoke about it as the names of the connecting between the upper world and the physical world, the right and the left, mercy and judgment. There are three of them, as we said before. There are three blessings. Each one of them is another meditation. So when you take the Tetragrammaton and the Aleph K Yud K together, that's for the first blessing. And then Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik. The word lehadlik means in Hebrew to light. To light the candle, to light. That's a verb. Okay? The numerical value of lehadlik is 180. 190 is the numbers of the three sefirot of the upper worlds. Chokhmah is 72, Binah 63, Zeranpin 45, together 180. So when we say lehadlik, it's not just lighting the physical candle, we are bringing the light from the upper worlds to draw the light to Malchut, which is the name of God, 52 to this world. Ner, then you say the word ner. Ner means a candle. Ner, as we said, is 250, which is the three meditations. So you meditate on these three meditations of uniting the heaven and the earth, the soul and the body, the upper and the lower, the spiritual and the physical. We're not destroying the physical. We unite it with the physical. We unite the physical with the spiritual, that the spiritual will overpower and lead. Then you say Hanukkah. Hanukkah, the word Hanukkah is a combination of two words. Chana, remember, 63 Bina, and 26 is the Tetragrammaton. Also, the initials of Lehadlik Ner Hanukkah is Nachal. Nachal means a river. You open the river for the flow of the mercies from above. And there's some other meditations, whatever you can make out of it. Second blessing, okay? So again, the same Baruch is Keter, Ata is Chesed, right column. Adonai is central column. Now it's a meditation of Yud Tetragrammaton, Youdkevitch, and Elokim, second meditation. Elokeinu melech haolam she'asa. In the word she'asa, there are two meditations. One, again, is the she'ah. This is chesed. There's the names of God. Chesed, giving, loving. And sa is the meditation of judgment. Elokim. Nisim la'avoteinu b'yamim ha'em b'zman hazeh. Then the third blessing, which you say it only on the first night, you bless. Again, Baruch Atah Hashem, Adonai. Then it's Youdkevitch and 65, 45, 65. That's a third unification. If you don't understand what I'm saying, just simply fast, just download the booklet and it's explained over there. שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Okay. Basically, this is it. I'm sorry it was fast. You can read the meditation in the booklet. The most important thing is just the meditation we said before. When you light the Hanukkah candle, you bring the light from the endless down to this physical world to shine into the tunnels of the snake and of humanity, of ourselves. So that light will give us the ability to overcome that part in our nature and humanity's nature. The idol worshiping, the idolatry, all of those whims and desires, and the bloodshedding. When we do that, we reconnect to the lights that were revealed from Rosh Hashanah till Simchat Torah. The light of life for the whole year long. And that's why many Kabbalists bless each other. Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year. Because it's like we get another time to connect to Binah, to the source of life for the whole year, for us and for all of humanity. Thank you so much and Happy Hanukkah.